Lilith Elizabeth Moore, student researcher. This interview is being conducted on 11/9/16 at Herland. My name is Lilith Elizabeth Moore, and I'm conducting this interview for the University of Central Oklahoma's Herland Sister Resources Oral History Project. So first, what is your name?
Terri Hoersch.
And what was your involvement with Herland?
Oh, I've been in town for, well over 25 years. And when I first got to town, I heard of Herland. And I was I was by then, several years into lesbian relationships, but still, just coming into town, I didn't know exactly what the community was, the lesbian community. And so I said, well, go check out Herland. And there were a couple of things like activities going on. And I didn't immediately, become involved or a frequent flyer with it. But it was like, okay, I know it's here, and it was just kind of neat. And then I did meet some people. We were talking music, that some musicians that I knew from outside that were also involved in Herland, and that was, like one other thread to get me involved. As much as I was involved, I'm not, any of the key players or long-term, board members at all. But that helped me to be present at some of their activities and holiday things.
So your involvement was mostly through the musical side of it?
Oh, that's what started, and that was such an interest of mine that, I would just kind of focus on that. Oh, they have a concert going on, or they need somebody for a concert. But, I would go to a lot of their holiday festivities. And
So how long have you been a part of Herland?
I'd say about 25 years.
What do you know about the history of Herland?
Oh, well, I'd say, I don't know, I'm really bad on dates, but somewhere between 5 and 10 years ago, they had this big, maybe 40-year anniversary for Herland. Correct me, you probably know what it was, this big anniversary.
Not off the top of my head.
Okay.
I'm bad at dates too.
Yeah, if I say 5 years, it's probably 10. So I'd say anywhere between 5 and 10. And so there was a booklet, and I was able to, hear some of the people's recollection of how it started and where it started and who were the movers and shakers. And it differed a little, Everyone could agree they were there, But, where it started as a bookstore, not as a residence, I believe. And that became like a women's bookstore. And then they were able to buy this property. If there was anything between, the original location and here, I don't know. Because they've had this building quite a while. And this is all I knew.
Right.
When I came, it was already here.
So do you remember any of the different stories that were told? You don't have to name names. I'm curious about
Shoot, no, I'm just saying that it varied a little about who the original people were, and maybe they were considered, in their minds, the original Herland founders before it was called Herland, in the morphing process. And I think there was, just some confusion of the distinction of, well, when was Herland, just because of the name or the building or what. But it's just like anything, Everyone has their different recollections.
Mm-hmm. What do you know about the structure of Herland as an organization?
Oh, it's always been like a consensus-based, which I never understood because I'm very pragmatic, and how are you going to have a consensus of everything? Let's, have an odd number of board members and, what's the majority? End of story. And they would go to, lengths to make sure everything was a consensus. And I can appreciate it. I really can. But it was like a new concept to me. And again, this year is the first time I've even approached being a board member, so I would just hear about it. My long-term girlfriend was probably one of the founders, I think you could say, most everyone could say she was one of the founders. So I'd hear things, even though she was always in the hierarchy and it went by sisters, like sister one, sister two, sister three, or it could have gone down to sister one, sister two, sister three. But it had these sisters, and it would kind of revolve. You would be sister one, then next year you'd be sister two. And I think that was in place of saying there's a president or vice president, but there was always like a treasurer. I know that was just called the treasurer. So anyway, yeah, the structure was a little bit different because just of this consensus, building, or the attempts at consensus building with all its inherent problems. And
Was there any particular situations you can think of where it was specifically helpful or specifically hindering?
Again, I was not involved in a lot of the nuts and bolts, so I can't really answer that. But to me, it had to be, well, I think there's probably a few people that are harder to please, and if you're spending a lot of time just continually going after the same couple of, members who's are not lockstep with the other ones, for better or worse, I think that's probably a lot of time and a lot of energy that might have been put, forth doing something else instead of like the consensus.
What role did Herland play specifically on 39th Street in this area?
Well, the gay strip, from here on down, it's had its ups and downs a lot, and like any organization that could be, a post for the community, I think was so beneficial. I mean, there's been times where the bars and the lounges, they'd open, they'd close, there'd be some gay restaurants opening and closing, and Herland, even though we're technically off the strip by a corner, it was always good just as, an anchor to know that they were there and the strip is there, and this is where the gay community, organizes.
What do you think some of the biggest impact of Herland has been?
I would say that, when a lot of the legal issues were going on, like even in the 70s, I would say, and I'm a very bad historian, but there were some major women's issues that were going on legally in the 70s, and Herland would organize with that on a local level. And I would hear stories where there'd be, if not buses, at least some carpools that would be marching in Washington, and I've seen pictures, and it was a prideful thing, to see it, even though I didn't participate in it. And so I would say just the legal part of it from then that I can, recall hearing about in the 70s that they would be involved in, up until, our most recent one with the marriage equality. It's, I mean, they're front and center. Herland and a couple of other organizations are just front and center, and they always had the monthly newsletter. And even if your life did not revolve around gay and lesbian issues, if you were a member of Herland, you would get this newsletter, and yeah, it would focus on these legal issues that were never ending. And it was good to touch base with that if the rest of your life doesn't, isn't aware of it on a monthly basis, that these things are ongoing, and there's, some watchdogs for it of what they're able to do on a local and maybe more basis. But I was proud anytime they were involved in a legal issue. I was like, you go.
Did you know anything about the legal defense fund that they had set up?
Just, I know the name of it, and I think it had to do with an adoption issue, and they were successful. right? Yeah.
How are issues of race and racial equality conceptualized within Herland?
Well, they were trying to be so inclusive because what's discrimination for one group is discrimination against us, you, the other people, and that's a term that's like bantered around or a phrase, but I can understand it that if you're repressed or worse, we all are until everybody is not, and that was kind of their thoughts on it. So it was not tolerated any kind of hint at discrimination.
How significant was the concept of a woman-only space?
Well, it wouldn't have bothered me if it wasn't. Mm-hmm. So, you're going to have conflicting views there. There were diehards that it's a safety thing and women will feel safe in, this environment. It's like, well, it wouldn't make me feel more safe one way or the other. So you're gonna hear some different ideas on that.
What is your concept of a safe space? We've heard that thrown around a lot in regards to Herland being a safe space.
Well, if I happen to be with a partner, it's that we could hold hands, we could, be normalized as we would in our own home. And, even today, like, okay, marriage is legal. And I know if I were to get married, and it's a possibility, to another woman, just because it's on paper at this point, I think about it. Would I still feel comfortable going through the fairgrounds, holding hands, and it would be legal. There'd be no reason why I shouldn't feel safe doing that. But it's questionable. Different times I'm sure I would feel uncomfortable. So Herland, for me, the safety is just being able to be yourself as you would in your home.
What was Herland's relationship to feminism?
Ask me that again.
Herland's relationship to feminism.
I don't really know what you mean there. Can you give me a smaller idea? Or?
Relationship to feminist ideals.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I know the bookstore had quite a few feminist type books.
Yeah.
Things like that.
If you saw our collection, it's heavy into that. So, I mean, yeah, it's as much feminism as there is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome. Did you ever go to any of the retreats or anything like that?
I have, and I'm not a camper, so I would forever be looking for a hotel room in the area, and who's going to watch my dog? How can I just hang? When most people, it's like, oh, that's a glorious thing, 3 days of just hanging. I'm like fidgeting. So no, retreats were not my cup of tea, though I did go to several, and I played in bands at several of them, and that was always fun. So it's a neat thing. It's just not my cup of tea.
Yeah. What kind of musical things did you do with Herland? You mentioned that was one of your involvements.
Several singer-songwriters. It's, I don't want to say it's a stereotype because I wish it wasn't. I wish women were as comfortable in, all types of music, especially, if they're going to be feminist, there would be all types. And there are some. But Herland was a lot of the singer, guitar thing, and it just kind of followed the tradition. When I came, I didn't know who some of these pioneers were. You probably know the names.
Not off the top of my head.
Okay, yeah. Well, they're big names, and I was like, who, what?
Do you remember any of the names?
Oh. I could find out, because Meg Christensen, something Christensen.
I think it's Meg.
Okay.
I feel like someone's mentioned that before, at least.
Yeah. So they were just kind of, following, the trend of those people, those pioneers, and that was neat. So I did, I played with Peggy Johnson some. That was instrumental and still is to this day in the women's community and women's music. And so we would do that, some cover songs, but a lot of original material.
Awesome. What are some of your best memories of Herland?
I like the Christmas parties, the potlucks, the parties here in I call it the clubhouse. Nobody else does, I liked the gatherings here.
What were those like?
Sometimes there wouldn't be that many people, from like 10 to 30. And it just always seemed festive. It just seemed special. People that you might not see on a regular basis, but Marianne, how are you again? What's been happening in the last year? And a time to catch up. And I also liked decorating. They've done like makeovers a couple of times, and you'll probably say, oh, this looks like it was probably the first makeover, the second makeover. But that was fun. It was just, gathering, together and painting or hammering, and I kind of like that part of it too.
What do you think the legacy of Herland is?
I'm very aware that it's like one of the longest running, women's organizations in the country. And I went to New York, quite a while ago, and I had a lot of free time, so I'd find some of the women's bookstores, and I'd see like on not billboards, but like, different postings of women's organizations, and I'd go there and it's like, oh yeah, well, they really don't do that anymore, or it's shifted here and now it's kind of with them, but I can't say any of it's going on.
Yeah.
And to know that like in New York you couldn't find anybody who could tell you a stable, women's organization that was there 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that likely will be there in another 5, to know that Herland that was like really impressive to me.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm not one of the big board members or anything like that, so I would just kind of watch it from the periphery, but it was really impressive to me that it was again an anchor.
What do you think some of Herland's significance has been or will be?
The legal,
Mm-hmm.
the gay and lesbian legal issues.
What do you think there is a place for Herland in the future? And if so, how would that be conceptualized?
I've thought, for quite a few years now, because it's everything to, keep enough people to keep the doors open. And I always thought, join forces with another organization. Do you need the Herland house, the building? And a lot of people are like, yeah, we do. And they could very well know what they're talking about. For me, I don't understand it that much. It just seems like Herland would be Herland if it's in, a different building, or, sharing a different building. I think, joining forces with another organization might be the only way that Herland can, maintain for the future. Was that the question, or did I?
Yeah, that was
okay.
perfect. Do you two have any other questions you wanted to ask?
I think you've covered most of the ones
Okay.
that I was thinking. I guess kind of contextualize, when did you come to Oklahoma City? Or are you from here originally?
No, I'm not. And so I came to Oklahoma City knowing nobody. And I came with another woman. Actually, I was in a road band, and I was in the same road band I'm from Chicago. I was in the same road band for like 4.5 years. And when that band retired, they said they needed a bass player in Oklahoma City. The fiddle player was gonna, come here, and I'm like, okay, well, I need a job, and I thought it would be very short-lived, and the next thing you know, I bought a house here. I'm living here. I went to school to get a nursing degree, and I'm an Okie, but no, I'm not originally from here.
So what was, when you came here, the context of OKC for gay and lesbian people?
I was new to the lesbian world, so I didn't know, would this be a big community in Oklahoma City compared to the population? I didn't know. I didn't have anything to judge it on.
Okay. You have any questions?
That sounds good. Did you have any fun, memories regarding music or something? I know it's always fun whenever you have a group of musicians together.
Yeah. Well, I just got these out of Elisa's mailbox last night. She says, well, I really don't have a whole lot, but, I have this compilation. I'll take it, And I've been aware of this. I thought it was actually a Peggy Johnson thing. But it's like Wendy Allen, I know I'm just going down the list of people who are on here. Wendy Allen, she's one of the most gifted, singer-songwriters that I know. And Dorinda, I actually played in her band, Dorinda. She was really good. We did, rhythm and blues, rock. Oh, she was wonderful. And I have no idea where she is. I haven't, in 15 years. Wanda Jean, she's around here. I'll tell you something, Wanda Jean, my road band when I was really young, before I even got into town, we were playing somewhere, I don't know, Texas or Kansas or whatever, and I had a little Pinto car, that I had, and she had a 8-track tape deck or whatever. Now, it wouldn't be 8-track, but probably cassette tape, and I bought it from her, and she remembered she'd come out to see us, and so when I came into town, she's like, I remember you from your band in Kansas or whatever. So I'm like, really? I'm like, what a small world. Yes, I bought a radio from you. Okay. And then Mary Catherine Reynolds, she's Miss Brown to You, and Louise and Mary's, they're the most, working people. I'm sure you've heard of them. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They have a track on there?
Yeah, well, Mary does. It's called Poco. I don't know if I've ever heard this in its entirety, but again, Elise, it was in her studio, which her and another woman, the studio is still there, and they still record, and I just thought that was so awesome to have your own studio, So this was, I think, the first thing they ever recorded. Donna DeSalvo has passed, and I'll tell you something interesting. They have the 5th Saturday, which is just a couple months a year, right? Have 5 Saturdays, ding, ding, ding. Because Donna passed, she was so loved. She was so funny, and she was a very, very entertaining, singer and guitar player. In her memory, because all the musicians are so scattered after so many years, just like any group would be, they get together, and I've done it a couple of times in honor of her, the 5th Saturday jams. And that would have never happened unless Donna was involved in Herland and all those people. Peggy Johnson's there. Free Fall, which is actually my long-term partner, ex-partner, was in Free Fall, and they're fun. Louise Goldberg, that plays with Mary Reynolds. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff on here, so I'm glad Elise gave them to me. I'll keep one.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, I think we're good.